welcome to the Build Smart Blueprint. We're actually going to be starting a new series today on SmartSuite dashboards, and we're just going to introduce you to our process of building dashboards, what goes in behind it, showing you at first some of the dashboards that we've built and what the end result could be. This is part of a series, so today we're going to keep it short. We're going to keep it just on the planning phase, but eventually by the end of this series you should be able to build your own dashboard that shows you what's important in your construction business.
It's probably worth adding, this is, you're going to probably share your screen and stuff, so somewhat I think the planning questions and the things that we go through would be valuable if you're listening to this, but you're probably going to get the most value from this by actually switching over to the video format on YouTube if you are listening to this on audio version, right?
Yeah, definitely. Hopefully we're going to try and verbalize as much as possible and also just talk through our thought process, but yeah, definitely this is one that you want to watch. Right, first of all, we're just going to show you some examples, a couple of examples of SmartSuite dashboards to show you the versatility of them really. And SmartSuite have got pushed a lot for their dashboard features. They were lacking before. They've really stepped up their game on the dashboards front. So just want to show you kind of what's available. There's a lot more out there. There are a lot more features, and I would really encourage anyone to just explore the features as they might find some things that are kind of more relevant to their business. Here are two.
Arthur, I think it's just worth, just before you're sharing your screen here, but for those that are not even familiar with the term dashboard, think of when you're driving your car and that dashboard that you're looking at when you're driving to give you like a check of the health of your car while you're driving. And that's exactly what we're talking about here, is the idea of being able to create some sort of board that gives you like metrics, the vitals of your business, whatever those vitals are, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's to give you an overview of what's important to you. This is the beauty of the dashboards as well. It's what you want to see, and we'll go through. I'm sure we'll talk about this, the process that JP and I went with his business, and the dialogue that we had to and fro, where he was explaining to me what was important to him, what he wanted to see on his dashboard. So this is a simple dashboard that tracks a project progress, and it's we've got four projects, all showing the progress, the money, the running costs, etc. It's pretty clear to see if you're watching this. If you're not, we've just got some blocks with numbers showing the contract value, variations, job running value, payment received, etc. on the project, but then also the expenses. We can see the running costs of the labour, the material running costs, and then what this owner's got is swallowed costs. So when he's just decided to give a freebie and not dispute something, or just doesn't want to go through the hassle of invoicing for something. That's what this owner wanted to track. This is completely modifiable. This is just an example of a simple kind of project dashboard. We've got another example here of a more complex dashboard, which is for an owner who wanted to know more about the budget around this project and all of his projects, in fact. And this gives a percentage of the completion and basically a breakdown of all the packages, where the progress is on site, and where he's over budget and under budget on each package. I didn't really want to go too much into these dashboards right now because they're not very useful without the information that is feeding into them. So we kind of want to, for this first episode, take a step back and go, okay, how do we actually get here? It's all well and good showing you these pretty boxes and numbers and pie charts and graphs, etc. But how do we actually get here? Where do we start?
I think as well, one thing that's worth mentioning on that. So, those of you listening to this or looking at this will see this looks very financial metrics based. Measuring financials and progress on a project, but very tied into the money side of things. Typically, we are talking to any construction company about dashboards, it's usually around that financial side because just the nature of people running construction businesses, they usually have a pretty good pulse of like what's going on site. It's usually the numbers side of what's going on that they need help with. But this kind of idea of a dashboard, what I think is important to emphasize is it really can be built to track what it is you, particularly as a business owner or a construction company owner, want to track. So you can have different dashboards in different areas. So if you were looking at this and thinking, oh, I'd more want to know more about what's going on my jobs, you can also do the same concept but have it attached to RFIs on your project, or the speed at which tasks are getting done, or the amount of hours being logged on a project in terms of labour, these kind of things. So I thought that's important to communicate that this is not just a financial management sort of process or a tool.
Yeah, you're right. I think with construction, there are so many moving parts. There are so many payments. There's money coming in at different stages, etc. It is often the thing that owners want to have that snapshot view of, because basically they're often lost. They just think, I don't actually know right now, is this project making money? Is it on budget or not, etc. So I think you're 100% right. These are just the examples that we're showing. I think it's also important, we're not going to go into it, but I think it's important to highlight that each of these numbers is connected with the real-time data that's coming in. And the beauty of the SmartSuite dashboards is you can click in and go as deep as you want to go. But that's something I think we'll tackle later, because I think what we want to do is, right now I'm going to switch over and we're going to talk about how do we plan this out? What's the first step? Because perhaps people haven't even used a platform like SmartSuite, let alone SmartSuite. What do you do? To do that, I think what we should do is we should take ourselves back to when JP and I first started working on dashboards with his business, and the process that we went through. JP said to me, I want visibility on these things and I don't have them. I've got the processes in place now, I feel, but I'm still, having to dig in here and find this number and then match that number with that number, etc. So JP, do you want to talk about that process?
I guess it's a pretty common scenario. So I wouldn't by any means say it's a very kind of individual situation, but I think it gotten to a point where I felt like I had pretty good systems in place in terms of like people were getting paid on time, the jobs were generally getting done on time, and we had got to a point where there was spreadsheets or there was files, or sometimes like on software things were being logged, but it felt like it was always a bit of a pain to like grab the right information when I needed it. And I think that was when I sort of was like, is there something different that we can do? And that's where you sort of said about looking at dashboard views and creating dashboard views, essentially utilizing the information we've already got, but actually putting it in a place that makes it easy for you to get it when you need it. So I think that was where the kind of need came from.
Yeah, and I remember, in particular, before you had a conversation with a subcontractor or before you had a conversation with a client, you wanted to not have to dig around and find certain information. You wanted to have a clear place where you could look at the information you needed.
And I think at the time, I was very much an operator, less so an owner. I really like to differentiate the two. What I mean by that is I sort of would pride myself on being able to be accessible on the phone if a client called me or a contractor called me, and be able to converse with them about their project or their contract or their subcontract. So it's definitely a useful tool. And in the opposite, it's definitely a feeling of like liability if you do see their name on your phone, they're ringing, and you pick up and you're thinking, shit, are they going to ask me something? And I've got literally no idea like where their project's at or whatever. But that ability, if on the other side, a strength, if you just had, okay, quickly just click that project or get that person's name up and very quickly, you've got the key information that you can have a very flowing conversation with them. And if they ask you about certain things, you can even drop things in to the conversation. Oh yeah, I noticed last week that the plumbing went in. How's the shower? Have you tested it out? That kind of stuff. Like it's very powerful to make the client feel like you're engaged in their project.
Something we haven't even talked about, which again is a dashboard function, is client portals, right? The next step to this is actually the client logging in and having their own dashboard, and you not getting the calls because they can go on their dashboard and have a look at, why have they sent me this variation? Oh, I can see on my dashboard, I approved that variation before and it's related to that. So that's another thing that we can get into perhaps later in the series if it's something that people want.
Sure.
The way we generally work is with FigJam. It's a whiteboard essentially where we map things out. This is basically to help people watching visualize. You could do this with a piece of paper and a pencil, but we're going to be showing kind of, okay, from the point of view of developer and owner, how do we get to these dashboards? What's the first step?
Yeah, and I really want to emphasize, that those of you that are watching this, like you, obviously there's benefit in having a specialist like us kind of working with you to do this, but you can literally, like when you're in the cafe, just turn over the napkin and literally draw this shit out, or just get, I always have a pack of post-it notes on my desk, and sometimes it's like just write stuff and just stick it on a wall or something. Like this kind of software is great when you're working, virtually, or you want to keep editing things and going back to things. But please don't look at this and use this as an excuse not to take some sort of action and map this stuff out, right?
Yeah, and also this isn't going to be clean. We're just going to do this as we do, right? When we're talking, when we're mapping out what needs to be done, it starts off fairly messy, really. Right, so JP, let's imagine that you've come to me and you want to build this dashboard, or you're just sitting with your mate in a cafe. You're like, right, I really want more visibility on, I showed you some things on projects, maybe it's projects. What do you want? Just tell me what you want, and we'll
so I guess like if it's a little bit hard to go back that far, but I was always like quite sales driven. I very quickly understood that the sales pipeline feeds everything else, and I think the most, like, because we went through several stages, I think, of systemizing my business and things, but I think one of the most critical points was a little bit later in my kind of journey of my company where I removed myself from the sales of the business, and usually that's like the last thing you do, and I still recommend that to be like the last thing you do when you're removing yourself. But there was a bit of kind of uneasiness around that because I wanted to keep my finger on the pulse of what was going on with the sales, but I kind of didn't want to step on the toes of the person I'd brought in to manage the sales of the company. So I think that was like the one. It's probably also the one I can remember the most because that was probably the most recent. So maybe if we do something around that, that might be quite good.
Yeah, I definitely think it'd be a great idea to create something around sort of more visibility on sales. I think it's something that we always encourage, whether it's a dashboard or not, just encourage our clients, like you need to know how many leads you got, etc. So I
Yeah.
think that's a great idea.
So in terms of like specifics, because I know that's why you got this Figma, this board up here. I tend to like to look at things as lead and lag metrics.
Okay,
When I'm looking at the sales pipeline. So in this context, I'm talking about like firstly inquiries coming in and seeing, like, for me that's the first thing I like to see, like what's the inbound flow into the business, or the outbound activity that we're doing, in order to generate those leads, and then kind of lower down to then start seeing, okay, like how many leads did we kind of convert and stuff like that. The
okay,
reason I kind of look at that is because I think it's really easy to kind of just look at, like, oh shit, how many deals did I close this week? But
yeah,
really, the bigger, more important thing is how much outreach did I do, or what did I do to actually define my next 6 months, and making sure that's on top. So based on that, I'd say like my top line figures that I wanted to see firstly was how much inbound inquiries were we getting that
okay.
that particular
How
week.
many? We're just going to write how many inbound. Okay. And what else? And that's just a
Um,
number that you want in a
yeah.
block,
So
or do you want it to be a
well,
chart against something else, like the
if you could
last
make a
week, or
note, because I guess it was, yeah, like the business in itself was quite cyclical, so it was always good to see it. The last like 3 months back,
okay?
um,
I'm going to write here
uh,
comparing to last
to the last
three
three
months.
months,
We're just
and it
writing
depends
ideas,
on
okay? So
yeah, on your business, but because I was tracking things quite religiously, I was able to compare year on year. Because
yep,
again, like most construction businesses, over Christmas tends to go a bit quiet, and then it kind of picks up in January. So you could kind of gauge, okay, is it just the normal flow of the year, or is it actually something's happening this year? That kind of stuff. So
okay,
that ability to compare this current year over the last year would be quite useful. Um, and then, and again, I'm not sure if this is a separate point, but when looking at inbound, what the breakdown of where that inbound was kind of coming from,
okay,
what the
yeah,
sources of that was. So whether
right.
that be through the internet, whether that be through our
Source
kind of
of
outbound
inquiry.
outreach stuff, referrals, maybe
Yep.
people seeing our hoardings, that kind of stuff.
So would you say a graph perhaps showing
Yeah, yeah,
this
like
many, this many
yeah,
was, I
I
don't know,
kind of like
Facebook
the
ads, this
idea
many
of where
was,
you've got like a stacked thing. I think they're called like a stacked bar chart.
stack,
Kind of, if
yeah,
you've got
stack
like
chart.
10, and
Yeah.
then if it's 50, it's like half of it is coloured one way, kind of thing. That
Okay.
kind of
And we can change if it's vertical, horizontal, and all that later. But basically, yeah, a stack bar chart around that. So that would be the very, very top. Would you
yeah,
say that that's okay? What else are
yeah.
we?
I think also because I was generally like quite active with doing some outbound stuff as well. So
Yep.
tracking the metrics of that as well, like targets, and calling to architects, to,
Okay.
to get in invitations to tender, and also sending out letters to people on the planning database. So that was like outbound generation stuff.
So
So
you want to track how many calls you made for letters, or is it
how many
how
we were
many
doing
calls in
against our
general?
targets basically. So
Okay.
we had benchmark figures, and actually that's worth mentioning. We had benchmarks for all of that, right? So we need this many inbound a week. We need this many outbound calls a week. We need to send this many letters a week. So if
Okay.
we can have it like somehow showing where we're comparing to what the targets we'd set out at the start of the quarter, that would be good.
Okay. So you've got benchmarks for each method, essentially, of outreach, and then you wanna have those kind of everything needs to be compared to benchmarks, essentially.
Yeah.
Okay. So we got those are the things that you want sort of at the top. We've got a stacked bar chart here. We've got how many inbound, that could that just be a number in a box? Is that how you would want it?
Yeah, I think it would be nice to see like this week how many we've got so
Yeah.
far as a box, but then like pretty quickly lower down like how we're performing week on week, like as a chart kind of thing. Because again,
Okay.
I'm just thinking of when I used to have my sales meeting with my sales team, the admin and the salesperson and stuff, and the estimator, like
Yeah.
to be able to open this up was kind of the point, so we could see, okay, we're doing pretty well this week. We've already got more than what we were targeting, so far, and it's only Thursday or whatever. Um,
Okay.
so
I'm just
that's
gonna
kind of
make
what.
a little, and as I did say, this is not gonna be this is not gonna be the most beautiful design. We're just showing. So underneath, you want a chart of some sort comparing
Yeah,
previous weeks or previous months, perhaps, whatever. You just want big number there, right? Okay.
yeah,
Source of inquiry. We've already said the stat bar chart. I'm not going to, spend time building, showing that. Perhaps in the next video, I'll kind of show
yeah.
when I've cleaned this all up what it looks like. Um, what are some other things that you
So I
you want to
think then
see?
the next sort of tier of it is I'd start to be curious about like where the what the pipeline looks like. So okay, now we've understood how many have entered the pipeline.
Yeah.
Now, like as a proportion of total people in my pipeline, where
So
are they? Like how many
stages.
is how many are
Okay.
at the
Okay.
quote stage?
How
How many are like
many
making a decision?
leads at each stage? Okay.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, there are various ways we could represent that. We could represent that in a pie chart. We could represent that in a bar chart. What would you go
I
for?
think
What's the
something
most
like
intuitive for
visually
you?
of I can't say exactly what chart. Maybe you'd need to suggest here or show me if you to build it.
Yeah.
But this idea of like looking horizontally or looking down, because
Okay.
again, thinking from a this is potentially during a meeting like a tool to discuss to visually identify like, oh, there's a bottleneck of loads of people are just sitting there waiting for their quotes, or loads of people
Yeah.
have had their quotes but haven't had any follow-up
W-
call. So something that
yeah.
shows like where it's
Were
loaded in
there
a certain
any
area.
were there any stages in particular where you would want to see, like, there's been X amount
Yeah,
here
so
that's
so the key ones would be, if we were to break it into key stages, there'd be the point from inquiry to um, having somebody visit the site. So inquiry to site visit, and then the next key stage is from the site visit being conducted to them receiving the quote, and then the the next stage would be from receiving the quote to having some sort of follow-up conversation with them about to discuss their quote.
So we've got inquiry to site visit. We've got
Site visit to getting quote.
So this is where you want to know, in particular, if there are some leads stuck there for a particularly long time. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. And then there's the last one is what is it? Following up after they've got their quote.
Yeah. So I'd say quote to following up.
So I'm just going to say follow up here. Right. So do we want to be, because obviously we've got the chart which shows these people are stuck, or not necessarily stuck. The chart just shows you how many leads you have at each stage. I think, and I remember from our conversations, you wanted to know when this, for example, had been more than 5 days. This had been more than a week or whatever, however many weeks it generally took to quote a job. Is that what we want here, where it's you can see a number?
I would almost look at it as like the next stage down. I would call it the next tier would be sort of like the audit stage.
Yeah.
So then the next stage would sort of be, as you've just said, maybe some sort of list view, let's say, of any person that's been stuck at a certain stage for, let's say, more than 2 weeks. So that would give us a kind of an identification of whether there's issues there, and then an additional stage would perhaps be audit thing would perhaps be looking at each individual person within my sales team and identifying like a list of if they've got any overdue tasks related to sales more than 24 hours overdue. I was super hot on, and I still am, right? With your sales, you've got to be doing all your tasks on the day they're due. If somebody says, follow me up on this day, you've got to do it. So having that view of like, okay, this person has 10 tasks that are now overdue, it just gives me an indication as the owner of like, are we dropping the ball somewhere? Is this person overstretched or whatever? Because, it's painful to lose leads because people are not kind of doing stuff on time.
So I think for the audit stage of the leads, I think a really good option here, and I can, in the next episode, I can kind of show you some examples, is where we have a record picker, which is filtered for leads that fall into these, inquiry to site visit, but they've been stuck at that stage for X amount of days. But then it gives you the option to drop down and choose the lead, and then more information will pop up. Because as you know, you can't just go, why is no one called up, Mr. Smith? You want that info because you've got your conversation going on with your team. Perhaps there's a hold up that is a valid reason and things like that. So I think that might be a good option there. And then
and perhaps actually just another view related to that is if there are any leads in your pipeline that don't have any tasks attached to them, because in theory,
right,
anybody in your sales pipeline should have a task pending or a task scheduled in the future to follow up with them, or they should be closed and not in your pipeline. So that kind of audit view of just quickly catching anyone that's kind of floating around because maybe somebody forgot to add something there would be a really good view.
So I think for the leads that are stuck, we'll call them list of stuck leads with option to kind of like open out more information, right?
Yeah, to see why, because there might actually be a valid reason why.
Yeah, exactly. And then I think for the sales reps, you want you just I think just visibility on their tasks that are overdue. Would that
Yeah, so
would that
if
be
I
enough?
guess if there was a way to just filter, of all the tasks that everybody's due to do, which of them are, was supposed to be done by yesterday or later, so
Yeah,
you can get just a quick view of like
yeah,
if that and often with these things, it's I just find the fact that you're able to track it does and the fact that you share that you're able to track it with your team creates a sense of like, oh shit, we better make sure before the meeting this stuff gets
yeah.
done, because I don't want to sit there in front of him and show that I haven't done this kind of stuff. So sometimes it's just having that can be quite powerful with the dashboards.
And then I think for the leads with no tasks is just a list of the leads with no tasks, and then probably a little bit of info on where they are in the pipeline, maybe
Yeah,
when they were last contacted or
yeah,
when the last
yeah.
contact happened. So we'll have yeah, list of leads with no task. I'm just going to say with additional info. Now,
I'd say the last like section, like going into that kind of starting with your kind of your lag and your lead metrics, like towards the end, I guess I would look at two other things. One would be like a summarized view of my like hottest leads in terms of we generally encourage clients to use confidence in close, this kind of idea of using a
yeah,
percentage based system to rate your prospects. So let's say, for me, we used to say anybody over 75% is like should get the kind of 5-star treatment in sales. So a very quick filtered down view of saying, okay, just give me a list of everybody in 75% at the moment. So I, as the owner, can quickly, say, okay, is there anything we can do to push those people along? And then secondly, another similar thing, just showing a list of all the people like as close to the conversion step as possible to see, okay, like
mm,
there's 10 people just sitting here waiting to pay a deposit. Like, what can we do this week to get someone over the line? Can we, do a special promotion? Can we, send out a brochure? Can we, send them some referral client phone numbers or whatever? Those two things is what I would say would be the last thing I'd be looking at on the dashboard.
so we've got all the leads, 75% plus confidence in close, and then close to closing stage. Um,
Yeah,
we
so
just
for
want
example,
we
in
just want
our
to know.
business, we used to have this process of, you send out the tender and you have a call with them, and usually if they have a call with you or a second call with you, that demonstrates that they're pretty, highly interested in your service. So, for example, in our business, it would be filtering. Just give me a list of everybody that's had a second call with us post getting the tender, but still hasn't paid a deposit. Like, and it usually would only be like 3 or 4 people, right? So it's just like looking at those
Yeah,
3 or 4 and seeing, okay, what can we do to push them over the line?
I mean, maybe this is not something we need to get into now, but I remember you guys used to have also your areas where you wanted leads. So you had your kind of like desirable areas, right? Would that be something that you would want to kind of mix with the hot leads? Like if they're over 50% confident in close, plus they are in a prime area, they are like, 5-star
Yeah,
lead
so
or
I mean, we over time we started to simplify things. So you're right, we had this concept of a heat map, um, prioritizing certain postcodes over others based on property values and people matching our client persona. But we tended to, in the end, take that into account in the kind of percentage. That's just how our business used to do
Okay.
it. Like it all kind of summarized into one. But I see what you're saying, because you kind
I
of
mean, we
can have it as
can,
two. But
yeah, we can get into that later if it's something
yeah,
that, people want to see and we have time. So I think we can actually stop it there. Let's just kind of have a quick sort of scroll. It's pretty basic, but this is actually all you need to just organize your mind to know, okay, this is what's important to me. This is what I want to see. And then what I would then do, and I'm not going to bore everyone with it, is I would then take this and start actually mapping out and showing in more detail, okay, this would look like this. Okay. I think what we'll do is we'll do that next episode, and then we'll start talking about, okay, what do we actually need to be tracking in order to have this information, because it's all well and good wanting to know, how many inbound you got, but if you're not writing it down somewhere and that's not connected to another place, probably on SmartSuite, how are you going to know? So, but we'll move on to that, I think, next time.
yeah,
So,
okay,
uh, yeah, we'll move on to that next time. That was really useful. I hope other people find it useful.